Hi guys, Rachel with Spunky Misfit Girl here, and I thought I would try something a little bit different and chat with you a bit. I wanted to try some videos that were in a little bit of a different format, and people always ask me when they come to craft fairs, how'd you get into this? How long have you been doing it? Where, how did this happen? How did you find this? And so I thought I would tell you just a little bit about my journey to junk journaling and just my creative history over time so that you can see how much it shifts and changes, and that where you started is not always going to be where you end up. It's a journey. And so that's what we'll talk a little bit about today. So I've always been a huge book lover. I learned to read really early when I was 4 years old. And I wrote fiction for many years and ultimately thought that that was going to be what I was going to do. I have actually 2 novels published. This is a middle grade novel called A Possibility of Magic. And I also have a young adult novel called The Flight of the White Crow. Both of those are available on Amazon. I kind of gave up writing a few years back, just stopped for a while because I needed a break. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. At some point, when I was younger and I was writing novels, I discovered Nick Bantock. And it's so fun because today, when I do craft markets, it's really fun. It's actually quite often that people come to me and say, oh, they're looking at my journals and they say, this reminds me of Griffin and Sabine, which has been a favorite of mine and actually many things of Nick's in the past. And this is if you're not familiar with it, it is a series that is correspondence between 2 people. And you actually have envelopes inside the book that have letters that you can pull out and unfold and read. And this is kind of my first experience with a style like that of junk journals. And I just really fell in love with it and always wanted to make something like it. But at the time, I was so focused on writing novels that I always thought it would be from the perspective of writing the story. And who knows, maybe it will be. I'm kind of at a point now where it's like I can combine the storytelling aspects with the junk journal feel to make something really unique and amazing. So at the time that I discovered Nick Bantock, pursuing things in that area, I also discovered Barbara Hodgson, who is a similar kind of author, only she writes full-length novels, which are also illustrated. They don't have as many interactive elements, but they have like vintage, her own pencil illustrations, but also vintage. This one's a flip. Try to let you see that there. Try to find some of the pencil drawings that she does. And then she was always collecting vintage ephemera. Beautiful. This is called The Lives of Shadows. This is one of my favorites of hers. And those of you who are into junk journals, I'm sure might very well be interested in finding some of these books. This is called Hippolyte's Island. It's also one of Barbara's. These are, for the most part, out of print today, so you'll have to find a used copy. They're not that easy to find, but they are stunning and totally worth having as printed copies. This one's called The Tattooed Map, and it really reminds me of everything to do with junk journals. it's got a very similar kind of feel to it. It's got these layouts that are illustrated. I think this is one of her earlier ones, and it definitely has that kind of feel like that. So I've always kind of had those books in my head as a starting point, as a kind of imaginary world that I wanted to create. And it's really rewarding when people come to me at markets and say things like, this is like another world, a fantasy world, it's magic, it's, you know, a real experience, because it's always what I wanted to create. So at some point, you know, as I was exploring these types of work, I was also learning to hand bind books. First, just from books that I checked out of the library or bought that just had instructions for different projects for how to bind books, just because I loved books and I loved paper. I loved that sort of tactile experience of putting them together. I also took some classes. I took a Coptic bookbinding class at one point that was really interesting. I more recently took a medieval bookbinding class. I don't love when it has to be really precise and the stitching and the sewing has to be super tight and neat, and you're trying to make, you know, a really well-bound book, and that's kind of the whole point. That's not fun for me. I love the junk journal style where I can just sew it together, and it makes a beautiful thing, but it's not focused on having every stitch be perfect, right? So there was a long period after that where I didn't really do anything with it. I was working full time. I was writing for the most part, working on fiction, working on novels, and I kind of set most of my crafty materials aside and didn't touch them for a while. And, you know, it's always, my whole life, it's always been work full time, do creative pursuits on the side, part time. And it's hard work. It's a lot of work, and it's hard to know what to pursue, what to go forward with, when. So you guys can help support my side creative pursuit that I'm doing now by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and watching the videos. And I really, really appreciate every one of you who's here doing that. So many years later, I just much more recently, about 3 years ago now, started a job that was very, very stressful. It was a new job in 2021, and it was really hard on me, and it was a lot of very intense pressure in a way that wasn't healthy. And so that actually started me needing pursuits outside of the digital world, something physical that would take me into the analog world and get me kind of back to reality in a way, right? Back to the present moment, sitting there focusing on the thing that was in front of me. And so I started bullet journaling at that point. I actually created a bullet journal I have it dated August of 2021. And I really used it mainly for doing just not very, I mean, they weren't meant to be good. Just these little mixed media collages. And it was really just for my own sanity and joy, and just a desire to create with paper, you know, just put some things down, play, really. And that was the thing. And that has been probably the most wonderful thing about junk journals for me, is that feeling of this can be about playing. You know, if I'm putting it down because it's pleasing to me, and it doesn't have to be a grand work of art. It's meant to be an experience. And this was all just, you know, daily reflections for me, tiny little collages, and that's what this book is all full of. And that was kind of the starting point for what turned into junk journaling for me. I also, at that point, started doing some mixed media collage. I was just enjoying that feel of just making these little fast, fun collages. And I started doing some on canvas. I did a few like this. Again, just trying to sink into the joy of it, right? Just to be there, be that in that present moment, and make something. And many years ago, I read a book, I think it was called Wired to Create, and it was all about the science. Actually, that might not be the right name. I'll look up the name and put it in the description. But it was a book that was about the science of creativity. And there were a lot of statistics about how you have to make a lot of work, basically, right, to get good at it. I mean, and that's really a key piece to this process, is you just have to keep making work. You can't let yourself get caught up in perfection. You know, this isn't exactly right. This isn't exactly the way I want it. I'm bad at this. And the doubts that are running through your head, you have to just make stuff. And that's what's been so beautiful. I was also making these little collages on gifts. You know, at Christmas time or for birthdays, I would wrap gifts in craft paper, brown craft paper, and then I would collage on top to make it beautiful. And I just enjoyed that so much. And it was a way of kind of taking the pressure off and making it just, this is just about joy. And I realized, you know, that when I was doing these things, this was something that really fed me. And it really made it so that the hours would pass and I wouldn't even notice, right? I'd look up at the clock and it would be 3 hours later. And it was like, I'm just sunk into a focus state that just feeds me. And I compared that with writing, and what a difficult slog writing always felt like. And it was never, I very rarely, if ever, had that kind of same experience with writing. And with junk journaling, it was much more just like, I want to do this all the time. There's no fight in me to have to force myself to sit down and do this. And it's not like, okay, when it's done, I enjoy that it's done and I have this thing. It's that, no, I actually actively want to do this. And when I'm not doing it, I can't wait until the next time that I'm going to be doing it. And so I really sunk into just this kind of mixed media collage style. And I, at that point, stumbled onto a tutorial. I think it might have been crafted by Norma. And it was a envelope junk journal tutorial. And I watched that video. I must have watched that video 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 times. And I ultimately created a template, which I still have, from that video, of this kind of envelope junk journal. It's pretty tatty. Doesn't look great. I inked the edges with black. Black ink. I'm seeing that now. And it's terrible. Because I had never inked edges. I didn't know what that was. I had no idea. And she's talking about inking edges, and I was like, what does that mean? I had this black ink. Anyway, that was my template. And I started making junk journals in this style with the envelopes, and just absolutely loved everything about it. And I made a pile of them, right? And then it was like, well, what am I gonna do with these? I was just off to the races, and that became kind of my signature style, this envelope journals. I still have them in my Etsy shop today. They're still very popular at craft fairs. They have so many little secrets to find that it's really fun with the little pockets here, and I'm much faster and much better at making nice ones. I actually didn't bring a nice one to show you. I should have, but I'll link to them in the Etsy shop, and maybe I'll do a face flip through and showcase some of them in a future video if that's of interest. So that's where we are today. I have my Etsy shop, I have this little YouTube channel, and I'm doing these kinds of, I've branched out into all kinds of different styles of junk journals. And, you know, in the future, I still think a lot about making books that are like Barbara's, that are like Nick's Griffin and Sabine books. I have 2 stories in the works. One novel that I almost finished when I was much, much younger, but I wasn't, I didn't have the skill, I didn't have the writing skill to tell the story that I wanted to tell. But I still hope to come back to that someday and figure out how to make it some kind of beautiful illustrated novel like these books of Barbara's. I'm working right now on a Queerists album as a downloadable product. So I will leave you with that as a teaser for the future. You can look up what it is. They're really fun. And that's the story. That's the story of how I came to be junk journaling, having a little Etsy shop, having a little YouTube channel, and I'm so happy to see you guys and have a chat. And I'm gonna try to do a couple more videos like this, maybe some on my my craft fair experiences and actually setting up and how to do that and things around that. Let me know in the comments what you like, what else you'd be interested in hearing about, especially from a face perspective like this, if you're enjoying these kinds of videos. And we'll do some more projects together soon too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every one of you, and I'll see you in the next video.